The wind howled across the frozen plains of the planet Kirill, carrying sharp shards of ice that cut through the thin fabric of clothing. In the small alien settlement, homes made of layered metal and crystal stood weak against the storm. The sky was a pale gray, and the dim light of the sun barely reached the ground. Every alien in the colony huddled close to fires, hoping the small flames could keep the cold at bay. Nira, a young alien mother, clutched her child Tilo tightly. Tilo's small body shivered, and Nira pressed him close to her chest. Her only warm cloth, a hand-woven piece from her own ancestors, barely covered both of them. Her arms ached from holding him so tightly, but she could not let go. The cold was merciless, and she feared that if she turned away for even a moment, the storm would claim her child. She looked around at the settlement. Other families were also wrapped in thin cloths and blankets, but the wind seemed stronger than usual today. The colony had survived many storms before, but this one felt different. It was harsher, colder, and longer than anything Nira could remember. She prayed silently to the spirits of the planet, hoping they would protect her child. Suddenly, a sound came from the horizon. It was not the wind, not the usual creaking of frozen metal. It was different, a low hum that grew louder by the second. Nira squinted against the icy wind. Far away, a ship descended from the sky, its smooth surface glinting in the weak sunlight. The aliens froze, unsure if it was a friend or an enemy. Tilo clutched Nira's neck, his eyes wide with fear. "Mother," he whispered in his soft voice. "Who is coming?" "I do not know, Tilo," Nira replied, trying to calm him though her own heart raced. She wrapped the cloth tighter around him. "Stay close to me. Do not be afraid." The ship landed with a heavy thud, kicking snow and ice into the air. Slowly, a ramp unfolded, and a figure emerged. Nira's heart skipped a beat. The being looked different from any alien she had ever seen. It had smooth skin, two eyes that seemed gentle, and its movements were calm and careful. Its clothing was unusual, thin but strong, covering it fully. Nira could not understand its words, but she sensed it meant no harm. She stepped forward, holding Tilo close. Other aliens watched from their shelters, whispering among themselves. Some were afraid, but Nira felt a strange calmness in the being's presence. It did not rush, it did not threaten. It simply stood and looked around, observing the settlement. Nira took a deep breath. She knew she had to do something. The storm was growing stronger, and her child was freezing. She raised her hand and called out in the colony's language, hoping the being would understand. The figure turned toward her, its eyes meeting hers. There was a softness in them, a kindness that made Nira believe it could help. She took a careful step forward. "My child is cold," she said. Her voice was weak from shouting over the wind, but the being seemed to understand. It nodded slowly, and Nira felt a wave of relief wash over her. The being reached into its own clothing and pulled out a thick piece of fabric. It looked strange, different from anything Nira had seen before, but it radiated warmth. She gasped as it slowly approached her. "No," she said softly. "This is not yours. Take it back." The human shook its head, gesturing that it wanted her to take it. Nira hesitated. She had never been given anything freely. The colony had survived by sharing what little they had, but outsiders never offered without asking for something in return. Yet, something in the human's eyes told her it expected nothing. Tilo's teeth chattered as the wind blew stronger. Nira looked down at him, her heart aching. She could not wait. She stepped closer, and the human gently wrapped the warm fabric around Tilo. Nira could feel the heat spreading, melting the frost from his tiny body. His shivering slowed, and his small face relaxed for the first time in hours. Nira's hands trembled as she held him. She looked up at the human. "Thank you," she said simply. It seemed to nod in response, a quiet gesture that said more than words could. The storm continued to rage, but for the first time Nira felt hope. She watched as the human moved carefully through the settlement, helping others where he could. Some aliens were afraid, but many were curious. They began to notice that he worked without complaint, that he did not seem to fear the cold or the harsh winds. Nira held Tilo close, his small arms wrapped around her neck. She realized that this being was different. Humans, she thought, were not like the outsiders she had heard about. They did not take, they gave, they protected. And in this frozen land, that gift was more valuable than anything she could imagine. The wind began to die down slightly, and the pale sun shone a little brighter. Nira looked around at the colony. Other families were beginning to emerge, watching the human and the way he helped. Some began to share what little they had, and slowly, the settlement started to feel warmer, not just from the heat, but from the presence of someone who cared. Nira held Tilo tightly and whispered, "Maybe we are not alone. Maybe there is someone who can help us survive." She looked at the human who had stopped for a moment, his gaze gentle and calm. She did not know his name, and she did not need to. In that moment, he was a friend, a protector, and a symbol of hope for the colony. The first day of the storm was ending, and though the winds were still strong, Nira felt a spark of courage. She knew that surviving this world would not be easy, but perhaps, with the help of these strange new beings, the colony could endure. She held Tilo close, feeling the warmth of both his body and the human's jacket. And for the first time, she believed that survival was possible. The storm had passed, but the icy wind still cut across the settlement. The aliens moved carefully outside, checking their shelters and warming themselves by small fires. Nira walked slowly, holding Tilo close. He was quiet, his small face buried in her chest. The warmth of the human's jacket still lingered, and for the first time in days, he seemed safe. Nira looked toward the human, who had stepped back slightly, watching her. He stood tall and calm, his jacket now open at the front. His hands were strong but gentle. Something about him felt familiar, though she had never seen anyone like him before. The human's presence was reassuring. He did not speak their language, but his gestures and expressions carried meaning. The settlement was quiet, except for the soft crunch of footsteps on ice. Nira noticed other aliens watching from a distance, their curiosity mixed with caution. Many had heard stories of humans as outsiders, dangerous and unpredictable. But this human had not acted like those stories suggested. He had not demanded anything. He had not used force. Instead, he had given warmth and protection when it was needed most. Nira took a deep breath. She knew she had to communicate, even if it was difficult. She knelt down slightly, lowering Tilo to the ground. He looked up at her with wide eyes, his small body still trembling from the cold. "I am Nira," she said slowly, pointing to herself. "This is my child, Tilo. We need help. Can you understand?" The human tilted his head, his eyes calm and attentive. He reached into a small bag he carried and pulled out a thin device. The device glowed softly, and he pressed a button. A gentle hum filled the air, and a small holographic display appeared. Symbols moved across the display, and though Nira could not understand the shapes, she sensed that the human was trying to communicate. He pointed to himself, then to Tilo, then made a gesture as if wrapping warmth around the child. Nira's eyes widened in understanding. He was asking to help. He wanted to make sure her child was safe. Relief flooded her chest. Nira nodded slowly, then pointed to the damaged shelters around the settlement. She gestured toward the cold, broken structures, then back to Tilo. The human's eyes followed her gestures carefully. Then he nodded again. He understood that the settlement needed more than warmth. It needed protection, guidance, and hope. Other aliens began to approach cautiously. A small group of elders walked toward Nira and the human. Their eyes were sharp, filled with skepticism. One elder stepped forward. "Who is this being?" he asked, his voice firm but not unkind. "Why has he come here?" Nira explained simply, pointing to Tilo and then to the human. "He helped my child survive the storm," she said. "He does not speak our language, but he shows kindness. He does not ask for anything in return." The elders studied the human carefully. He remained still, allowing them to observe him. He did not raise his hands in anger or threaten. Instead, he bowed slightly, a sign of respect. Slowly, the elders' expressions softened. They whispered among themselves, debating, but it became clear that this human was not a threat. Nira felt a small sense of pride. She had taken the first step toward trust. The human's gestures showed patience, courage, and understanding. He was not just strong physically, he was strong in spirit. That strength was different from what the aliens usually saw in outsiders. The human then reached into his bag again. He pulled out small tools and objects. One by one, he showed how they could help repair the shelters. He held up a small device, pressed a button, and a warm light spread across a broken wall, temporarily sealing gaps against the wind. Nira gasped. The technology was unlike anything the colony had ever seen. An elder stepped forward. "Can he do more than fix walls?" he asked. "Can he help us survive?" The human nodded slowly, then pointed to Tilo and other children in the settlement. He made a sweeping gesture with his arms, suggesting protection, learning, and care. Nira realized he wanted to teach, to guide, and to strengthen the colony, not just repair the physical structures. Over the next hours, the human worked carefully, showing small demonstrations. The aliens watched, their fear slowly replaced by curiosity. He moved confidently in the icy wind, unafraid of the cold that had caused so much suffering. Nira noticed that the human seemed to understand the land as if he respected it, rather than trying to control it. Every gesture was deliberate, every action thoughtful. Tilo followed Nira closely, his small hands clutching hers. He peeked at the human, then stepped forward slowly. The human smiled, a warm, encouraging smile that made Tilo's eyes light up. He knelt down, holding out his hands. Tilo hesitated, then took a small step forward and reached out. The human gently took his hands and lifted him slightly, showing friendship. Nira watched silently. She realized that humans had a way of connecting, not through force or fear, but through trust and care. She could see it in Tilo's face, the child's first smile in days. The small gesture of kindness had not only saved him physically, but had begun to heal his spirit. As night fell, the human prepared a small fire using simple devices from his bag. The aliens gathered cautiously around it, curious and eager. The warmth spread through the settlement, and Nira held Tilo close. She looked at the human, grateful beyond words. He had arrived like a stranger, yet he had already changed their lives. Nira understood something new that night. Survival on Kirill required more than strength. It required courage, wisdom, and compassion. And in this human, she saw all of those qualities. He was not just a helper, he was a symbol of hope. The settlement slept uneasily, still wary of the planet's dangers. But for the first time, there was a sense of possibility. The human had arrived, and with him came knowledge, warmth, and protection. Nira held Tilo tightly, whispering softly, "We are not alone. Perhaps we can survive after all." In the distance, the stars shone faintly over the icy plains. Nira's heart felt lighter. She did not know what the future held, but she knew that with this, Human by their side, the colony had a chance. The sky darkened once again over the settlement. The winds of Kirill had returned with a vengeance, stronger and colder than before. Ice whipped across the ground, and the dim sunlight was nearly blocked by thick clouds. The aliens scrambled to strengthen their shelters, tying loose panels and securing fragile doors. But the storm was relentless. Nira held Tilo close. His small body trembled, despite the warmth of the human's jacket that still wrapped around him. She shivered herself, clutching the cloth tightly over both of them. Her arms ached, and she knew they could not survive much longer if the storm continued to grow. She glanced around the settlement. Other families were also struggling, and some children cried from the cold. The human, Ryan, stepped outside his temporary shelter and surveyed the storm. His eyes were calm, even as the wind tore at his clothing. He moved carefully toward the settlement, each step precise, deliberate, and safe. Nira noticed the difference in him. Unlike the aliens, who struggled against the cold, he seemed to move with purpose, almost as if he could read the storm itself. Ran approached Nira and Tilo. The wind blew fiercely, but he reached out his hands without hesitation. Nira shook her head at first. "It is too dangerous," she whispered. "You will freeze." But Ran only shook his head. Slowly, he unbuttoned his jacket and held it open. Without a word, he wrapped it around Tilo and Nira. Nira felt warmth flood through her body. The human's jacket was unlike her cloth or any blanket the settlement had. It was thick and strong, insulating them against the freezing wind. Tilo pressed close, his teeth no longer chattering. Nira looked up at Ran, eyes wide with gratitude. "You saved my child," she said simply. Ran nodded, not needing words. His gestures, calm and precise, said enough. In that moment, Nira realized that humanity's strength was not just in physical power, but in compassion, in the instinct to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The storm raged on. Ice crashed against the shelters, and parts of the settlement shook under the force of the wind. Ran moved quickly, helping other families. He showed the aliens how to use their thin metal panels to block gaps and how to tie their shelters more securely. His hands moved confidently, fixing weak points in minutes. Aliens watched in awe. Nira saw a small family trapped in a broken shelter. Without hesitation, Ran dashed across the icy ground, ignoring the sharp wind that would have slowed any alien. He reached them and lifted the children one by one, wrapping them in his warm clothing. Nira gasped. She had never seen anyone face danger with such courage and calmness. The children were safe, and the parents looked at Ran with eyes full of wonder. As the storm continued, Ran did not stop. He worked tirelessly, repairing shelters, moving supplies, and checking on every child. Nira followed him, helping when she could. She realized that survival on Kirill was not just about strength. It was about courage, intelligence, and care. Ran had all three in abundance. The aliens began to work together, inspired by Ran's example. Families that had been isolated started sharing blankets and cloths. Elders helped children move to safer areas. Even the younger aliens, usually fearful of the cold, began assisting in simple ways, carrying small tools or helping tie shelter panels. The settlement's spirit shifted. The storm was still dangerous, but hope began to spread. Nira held Tilo close. He looked up at Ran, eyes wide. "He is like a hero," Tilo whispered, his small voice filled with admiration. Nira smiled, tears freezing slightly on her cheeks. "Yes, Tilo," she said. "He is more than a hero. He is human." The storm raged into the night. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the cold was relentless. Ran used small devices from his bag to create temporary heat sources, placing them strategically in the settlement. The aliens gathered around these warm points, their bodies relaxing for the first time since the storm began. Children, once shivering and scared, began to smile, feeling safe for the first time in days. Nira watched Ron as he moved through the icy night, checking on every shelter, every family. She realized that humans were extraordinary, not because they were strong alone, but because they inspired others to be strong with them. Ron's courage gave the aliens hope. His actions showed them that even the harshest storms could be survived if they worked together and cared for one another. Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of slowing, yet the settlement was holding. Nira felt a deep sense of respect for the human beside her. He had taken off his own jacket to protect her child without hesitation. He had faced the storm, cold, and danger without complaint. His strength was a gift, and the aliens began to understand that humanity was not just about power, but about spirit. Finally, as dawn approached, the storm began to weaken slightly. The winds dropped, and the icy shards in the air lessened. Nira looked around at the settlement. There was damage, yes, but fewer than she had feared. Families huddled together, and children slept wrapped in warmth. The human had made a difference. Tilo slept peacefully, still wrapped in the human's jacket. Nira held him gently, brushing a small strand of hair from his face. She whispered softly, "We survived because of him, Tilo. This human saved us." Ron stood nearby, his eyes scanning the settlement one last time. He nodded slightly, satisfied that the aliens were safe. Nira realized that he did not seek recognition or praise. His work was not about being thanked. It was about doing what was right, protecting those who needed help. She felt a deep admiration and a spark of hope for the future. The sun rose weakly over the icy plains. The storm had passed, leaving a cold but calm landscape. Nira looked at the human once more. "Perhaps we can learn from you," she said quietly. "Perhaps, together, we can survive here." Ron smiled gently and nodded. He did not speak their language, but his actions already told the aliens everything they needed to know. Strength, courage, compassion, and intelligence. These were the qualities that would help them endure Kirill. For the first time, Nira felt that survival was not impossible. She held Tilo close, feeling the warmth of both the human's jacket and the hope that had entered their lives. The storm had tested them, but humanity had shown them a new way. They could survive if they were brave, if they were clever, and if they cared for one another. The icy plains were still harsh, and the planet's dangers remained. But now, with Ron by their side, the colony could face the future with courage. Nira smiled faintly, looking down at Tilo. "We are not alone," she said softly. "And now we have hope." The morning after the storm, the settlement was quiet, but alive with cautious energy. The damage from the night before was evident. Broken shelter panels, scattered supplies, and a layer of ice covering everything. But there was a new feeling among the aliens: hope. Nira noticed it in the way families worked together, in the way children helped carry small tools, and in the careful but determined looks of the elders. Ron moved through the settlement, calmly assessing the situation. He had spent the night helping repair the most urgent damage, and now he began teaching the aliens how to improve their shelters against future storms. Nira watched closely. Every step he took was deliberate. Every tool he used was simple but effective. His gestures were clear, and the aliens quickly began to imitate him. Nira held Tilo close, listening as he asked questions about the devices Ron used. Ran knelt down beside them, pointing to each device and showing how it worked. Tilo's eyes widened with curiosity. "Can it make warmth last longer?" he asked in his small voice. Ron nodded and tapped a small panel, showing how energy could be stored and released gradually. Nira realized that humans had ways of thinking and creating that were completely new to their colony. Other aliens gathered around, observing carefully. Some of them were hesitant at first, unsure if they could trust the humans' ideas. But Ron was patient. He showed them slowly, step by step, using simple gestures and demonstrations. Within hours, the aliens were able to replicate some of his work, reinforcing their shelters and even creating small devices to hold warmth longer. Nira felt a sense of pride and excitement. Her colony had survived many storms, but they had done so through struggle and fear. Now, with the guidance of the human, they were learning new ways to live safely. Ron's methods were practical, easy to follow, and powerful. The settlement began to feel stronger, more prepared, and more hopeful than ever before. Tilo ran to the human, carrying a small broken panel. "Can we fix this like you?" he asked eagerly. Ron smiled and took the panel, showing Tilo how to attach it securely using a simple tool. The child followed carefully, his small hands learning quickly. Nira watched, amazed at how easily humans could teach others. Ryan's patience and clarity made learning feel natural and possible. As the day passed, Ryan moved from family to family, demonstrating ways to capture warmth, strengthen walls, and prepare for future storms. He even helped build small wind barriers using local materials and his own tools. The aliens were quick to observe, imitate, and improve upon his methods. Nira realized that humans not only survived in difficult conditions themselves, but also helped others survive by teaching them to be better. The elders approached Ran, their expressions serious but curious. One of them, a tall and wise alien named Vero, spoke slowly. "You have helped us survive the storm. But can your ways keep us safe in the long term?" Ron nodded, pointing to the shelters, then gesturing toward the sky and the icy plains. He demonstrated with his hands how energy could be captured, stored, and used to protect against cold. Vero watched carefully, impressed by the logic and simplicity of the methods. Slowly, he nodded. "Perhaps there is more to learn from your people," he said. Nira felt a small thrill. The elders were difficult to convince, but now they were beginning to see the value in Ron's ideas. The human had not only helped the children and families survive the storm, but had also earned the trust of the leaders of the colony. The afternoon brought new challenges. A weak shelter wall had begun to collapse under the lingering ice, and a young alien girl cried as she clutched her small blanket. Without hesitation, Ron lifted the panel carefully and held it in place while the girl's family reinforced it. Nira noticed that even in simple acts, humans had a sense of timing and purpose that was inspiring. Each action was thoughtful, designed to protect and teach at the same time. By evening, the settlement had transformed. Small fires glowed warmly, shelters were stronger, and the aliens had begun to understand the methods that Ron taught. Children laughed as they helped carry panels and materials. Parents worked side by side with the human, learning quickly and even suggesting their own improvements. The settlement was alive with energy and cooperation, something Nira had never seen before. Nira knelt beside Tilo as he adjusted a small device to hold warmth. "You are learning fast," she said, smiling. Tilo looked up at Ra'an and then at his mother. "He is teaching us," Tilo said softly. "Humans are very clever." Nira nodded. "Yes, Tilo, and we can learn from them. Together we will survive." Ra'an, noticing their conversation, gave a gentle nod. He did not speak their language, but his presence was encouraging. Nira realized that humans did not need words to lead. Their actions spoke more powerfully than any speech. Courage, intelligence, and kindness could teach lessons that no language could fully capture. As night fell, the settlement gathered around the larger fires. Ran had set up several small devices that gave steady warmth. The aliens sat close, listening and watching. Even though they did not understand everything, they felt safer. They had learned for the first time that survival could be guided by knowledge, planning, and teamwork, not only by fear or endurance. Nira reflected on the human who had arrived during the storm. He had given warmth, safety, and now knowledge. The colony was learning to see humans not as strangers but as allies. She realized that humanity's strength lay not only in surviving harsh conditions, but in helping others survive alongside them. The night was still cold, but there was no fear. Nira held Tylo in her arms, looking at the glowing fires and the busy settlement. "We are learning," she whispered, "and we are stronger because of him." Above them, the stars shone faintly in the clear night sky. The icy plains of Kiril seemed less threatening now. With humans teaching them, guiding them, and showing the way, the colony could endure anything. Nira felt a deep sense of gratitude and hope. The human had come as a stranger, but he had become a teacher, a protector, and a symbol of what humanity could offer. For the first time, Nira believed that survival on Kiril was not just about enduring the cold. It was about learning, growing, and sharing strength. The human had shown them the path forward, and the colony was ready to follow. The settlement had changed in just a few days. The damage from the storm was mostly repaired, but the greater transformation was in the hearts and minds of the aliens. Families moved with more confidence, children played in safer areas, and elders no longer whispered anxiously about the dangers of Kiril. Nira noticed the difference, and it filled her with cautious hope. Ron moved through the settlement with calm purpose. He was no longer just a visitor or a helper. He had become a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of strength. The aliens had begun to trust him completely. They followed his instructions without hesitation, asked questions freely, and even suggested their own ideas for improvement. Nira observed the interactions carefully. She realized that humans had a special ability to inspire trust, to lead not with fear, but with care and knowledge. Tilo ran toward Ran, carrying a small bundle of cloth. "Look!" he shouted excitedly. "I made this warmer with your method." Ran knelt down, smiling, and showed Tilo how to secure the cloth even better. The child's face lit up with pride, and Nira felt a warmth in her heart. She realized that her child was learning not just survival skills, but the importance of courage and creativity. Other children began to follow Tilo, eager to learn from Ryan and imitate his actions. They gathered small panels, clay, and cloth, experimenting with ways to improve their shelters and keep themselves warm. Nira watched as their laughter and curiosity filled the icy air. The storm had been fierce, but the human had transformed the fear it caused into determination, learning, and hope. The adults also began to work together more closely. Families shared tools, food, and materials, guided by the human's instructions. Nira noticed elders teaching younger aliens how to reinforce walls, tie knots, and maintain warmth devices. Ran moved among them, offering advice and demonstrating techniques, always patient and encouraging. The settlement was alive with energy, a small community of learners working together for survival. Nira approached Ran as he showed a group of aliens how to adjust small heat panels. "You are teaching them very well," she said. "I have never seen our people work together like this before." Ran smiled gently, gesturing that he was happy to help. Nira understood without words that humans did not need praise. They acted because it was right, because it saved lives and strengthened others. Viro, the elder, walked over to Nira and Ran. "We are learning quickly," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your ways are strong and clever. We have survived storms for generations, but now we see a different way. Perhaps we can survive even greater challenges if we continue like this." He paused and looked at Ran. "We trust you, human. We will follow your guidance." Nira felt a surge of pride and relief. The elder's approval was significant. It meant that the entire colony could now benefit from the humans' teachings, not just the younger generation. Trust was spreading, and with it, a sense of safety and unity that Nira had never thought possible on this harsh planet. That afternoon, Ron organized a small task group. He paired humans and aliens together, showing how to work efficiently. Nira was amazed at how quickly the aliens adapted. They learned to anticipate each other's movements, to share materials without confusion, and to follow instructions accurately. Even small children participated by carrying light tools or observing carefully, learning through action. Tilo proudly helped other children, guiding them with his own small hands, showing them how to use cloth and panels to protect themselves. He looked up at his mother with bright eyes. "I am learning too, Mother," he said, "and I want to help everyone." Nira smiled. Her child had not only survived the storm, but he was growing braver and wiser under the guidance of the human. Even the skeptics in the settlement began to change. Aliens who had doubted Ron's methods now observed the results. They saw shelters that could withstand the wind, warmth that lasted longer, and children no longer frightened by the cold. Slowly, these skeptics began to help, offering their own knowledge of the land to improve the shelters further. Ron accepted their ideas, showing respect and combining human techniques with alien knowledge. The partnership was natural, and the settlement grew stronger with every passing hour. As evening approached, Nira noticed a calm settled over the colony. Fires glowed warmly in front of shelters. Laughter and quiet conversation filled the air, and the aliens moved with purpose and cooperation. Tilo rested against her, tired but happy. "We are safe," he whispered. "We are learning to be strong." Nira held him tightly, feeling his small heart beating steadily. "Yes, Tilo," she said softly. "We are learning to survive together. And we are stronger because of him." She looked at Ryan, who was helping a group of children adjust their small heat panels. The humans' patience, intelligence, and courage had changed the settlement. They were no longer alone. The night was calm, and for the first time in weeks, the icy plains of Kiril seemed less threatening. Nira realized that survival was not only about withstanding the cold or enduring the storms. It was about building trust, learning from others, and working together. Humans had shown them this truth, not through words alone, but through action and example. As she watched Ron guide the settlement, Nira reflected on the journey so far. The storm had tested them, threatened them, and forced them to struggle. Yet, from the danger had come growth. Humans had arrived not as conquerors or strangers, but as partners and teachers. Their presence had sparked courage, learning, and unity. Nira whispered softly to Tilo, "We have learned much, and we will continue to learn. With him, we can face any challenge." She looked toward the human, who glanced back briefly, his eyes calm and kind. Though he did not speak their language, Nira felt that he understood completely. His actions had already taught the colony lessons that words could not convey. Above the settlement, the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. The icy plains were still harsh, but the colony was no longer afraid. They had learned to trust, to work together, and to draw strength from one another. And at the center of this new hope was the human, Ron, who had shown them that courage, wisdom, and compassion could change lives. Nira held Tilo close and whispered once more, "We are not alone, and we are strong enough to survive." The child smiled and rested against her, feeling safe, warm, and ready to face whatever challenges might come next. The settlement slept peacefully that night, the fires glowing, shelters secure, and hearts full of hope. Humanity had shown them the way, and the aliens had begun to believe in themselves in ways they had never imagined. Trust had been built, and with trust came strength. Together, humans and aliens could face any storm, any challenge, and any danger that Kirill might bring. The settlement had grown stronger since the storm. Shelters were reinforced, warmth devices were working, and the aliens had learned to cooperate in ways they had never done before. Nira felt proud watching her colony thrive, and Tilo's laughter filled the air as he played with other children near the glowing fires. But Kirill was still a dangerous planet, and no one could let their guard down. Late one afternoon, a deep rumble shook the ground. Nira froze, her heart pounding. The sky darkened as a tremor traveled through the icy plains. Shelters creaked, and some small structures began to collapse under the strain. Children screamed in fright, running to their parents. Nira grabbed Tilo, holding him tightly as the ground shook beneath them. Ron immediately sprang into action. He ran across the settlement, his eyes scanning every shelter and family. Nira followed, trying to keep up. The tremor grew stronger and ice sheets cracked in the distance. The humans' quick movements and calm voice gestures inspired confidence. Aliens who had once panicked were now moving with purpose, securing. Children reinforcing weak walls and carrying supplies. Vero, the elder, shouted instructions in his language, directing families to safer areas. Ron nodded and demonstrated a simple method to brace weak structures with metal panels and support beams. Aliens followed quickly, moving as one unit. The tremors were powerful, but the combination of human intelligence and alien knowledge created a system that could save lives. Nira saw a family trapped in a collapsing shelter. Without hesitation, Ron ran toward them. He lifted debris carefully, making space for the parents and their 2 children to escape. Nira followed, helping to guide the family to a safer area. The children clutched her hands, their eyes wide, but trusting. Ron's calm determination gave everyone the courage to act quickly. The tremors continued, and a snowdrift collapsed on a small group of aliens. Ron did not hesitate. He used tools from his bag to lift heavy ice chunks, creating a safe path for the trapped aliens. Nira noticed how Ron's strength was not only physical. His mind worked quickly to plan the safest method, his actions deliberate, and every move calculated to protect life. The aliens began to imitate him, creating additional support beams and shoring up shelters. Tilo stayed close to Nira, watching Ron with wide eyes. "He is like a guardian," Tilo whispered. "He is protecting everyone." Nira nodded silently. The human had already shown them courage during the storm, but now his actions in the face of this tremor proved that humanity's strength was more than survival. It was leadership, intelligence, and compassion combined. As the tremors shook the ground, Ran moved toward the edge of the settlement. A fissure had opened in the icy plains, threatening to swallow several shelters. He assessed the situation quickly, then gestured to a group of aliens. Using simple tools and a shared understanding, they worked together to build a temporary bridge over the fissure, allowing families to move safely to higher ground. Nira watched, amazed at how humans could inspire coordination and action even under extreme pressure. Hours passed, and the tremors gradually lessened, though the threat of further collapses remained. Ron continued to move through the settlement, checking each shelter, reinforcing walls, and guiding families. Nira noticed that even the skeptics, those who had doubted him before, were now actively helping. The combination of human methods and alien experience created a system of protection stronger than either could achieve alone. Nira took a moment to look at Tilo. The child was tired but calm, trusting in the human's guidance. "We are learning," she whispered. "Even in danger, we are learning to survive together." Tilo nodded, his small hands gripping her arms. "I am not scared because of him," he said softly. "He knows what to do." As evening approached, the tremors finally stopped. The settlement was shaken, but still standing. Shelters were damaged, but lives were saved. Families gathered around fires, grateful for the warmth and safety that Ron and the cooperative efforts had provided. Nira held Tilo close, feeling both relief and admiration. Humanity had proven itself not only in action, but in teaching the aliens how to act, plan, and survive. Vero approached Ron, his expression serious but respectful. "Your people are remarkable," he said. "We have faced storms and cold, but this tremor could have destroyed us. Your guidance has saved many lives today. We owe you more than words can say." Ron nodded quietly, gesturing that the protection of life was its own reward. Nira realized that humans had a unique gift. They were strong, intelligent, and courageous, but they also shared these qualities freely. Ron had shown them how to act with purpose, how to plan, and how to care. The aliens were learning more than survival techniques. They were learning resilience, teamwork, and the value of guidance from others who had faced challenges and triumphed. Night fell, and the settlement rested under the calm sky. Fires glowed. Warmly, shelters stood firm, and children slept safely in reinforced areas. Nira sat with Tilo, reflecting on the day's events. The tremor had been terrifying, but it had also shown the colony what they were capable of when guided by courage and knowledge. Ron had become more than a helper. He had become a teacher and protector whose presence inspired confidence in every alien. Tilo yawned and nestled closer to his mother. "We are safe because of him," he murmured. "He is our protector." Nira smiled softly. "Yes, Tilo, and we have learned how to protect ourselves too with his guidance." She looked toward Ron, who was checking on a small group of children, making sure they were warm and calm. His quiet vigilance was a reminder that true strength combined action with care. The settlement had survived the tremor, but the lesson was clear. Life on Kirill was harsh and unpredictable. Storms, cold, and shifting ice could strike at any moment. Yet the aliens had learned something new. They had learned that survival depended not only on strength or fear, but on cooperation, intelligence, courage, and the willingness to help others. Humanity had shown them this truth through Ron's actions. Nira held Tilo close, feeling the warmth and safety around them. "We are stronger together," she whispered. "And we have learned from the humans that courage and wisdom can overcome even the greatest dangers." Tilo smiled sleepily, his small hands clutching her cloth. "I want to be brave like him," he said softly. Above the icy plains, the stars shone brightly. The tremors had tested the settlement, but they had also revealed the extraordinary capabilities of humans and the potential of the colony when working together. Nira understood that the partnership with Ron was not only about survival, it was about growth, learning, and discovering what they could achieve when guided by courage, intelligence, and compassion. The night was quiet, and for the first time in many days, Nira felt peace. The settlement was safe, children were protected, and the lessons of the day would remain with every alien. Ron had proven that humans could inspire hope, teach resilience, and lead without fear or demand. Nira whispered softly to Tilo, "We have survived the tremor, and we will continue to grow stronger. With humans beside us, we can face anything." Tilo smiled and drifted into sleep, knowing he was safe and ready to learn more. The settlement rested under the stars, alive with quiet gratitude and the knowledge that humanity's courage and wisdom had changed their lives forever. The settlement had changed completely since the first storm. Shelters were stronger, warmth devices were working, and the aliens had learned to cooperate in ways they had never imagined. Nira walked among the families, her heart swelling with pride. Children played safely, parents worked together, and even the elders moved with confidence, offering guidance rather than worry. The icy plains of Kiril were still harsh, but the colony had grown stronger, wiser, and more united. Tilo ran toward Ron, holding a small panel he had helped repair. "Look, I did it!" he shouted excitedly. Ron knelt down, smiling warmly, and showed Tilo a small adjustment that would make the panel stronger. Tilo's eyes lit up with understanding, and he followed carefully, learning through practice. Nira watched, amazed at how quickly her child and the other young aliens had absorbed human knowledge. The settlement was alive with energy. Aliens worked side by side, repairing and improving shelters, building small devices to capture warmth, and reinforcing walls with newfound skill. The humans' methods had been adapted, improved, and shared. Nira noticed that families who had once been isolated were now helping one another naturally, sharing tools, knowledge, and food. The sense of community was stronger than ever. Ron moved through the settlement, calmly observing and offering guidance. He did not give orders. He demonstrated, taught, and encouraged. His presence inspired confidence. Even those who had doubted him at first now followed his example, combining human techniques with their own knowledge of the land. Nira realized that humans had a unique way of showing leadership. They did not demand obedience. They inspired it through courage, wisdom, and compassion. Vero, the elder, approached Ron and Nira. "Your guidance has changed us," he said, his voice calm but serious. "We have survived storms, cold, and tremors, but now we see a new path. We can endure anything because we have learned how to work together, how to plan, and how to care for one another. We owe this to you, human." Ron nodded quietly, gesturing that he was glad to help. Words were not necessary. His actions had already spoken volumes. Nira knelt beside Tilo, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "We are stronger," she whispered, "and we have learned how to survive together." Tilo nodded, his small hands clutching her cloth. "I want to help everyone, Mother," he said softly. "I want to be brave like him." Nira smiled, understanding that her child had not only survived, but had grown in courage, wisdom, and compassion. As the day passed, Ron organized a small group to explore the surrounding plains safely. The goal was to identify areas where resources could be gathered and to scout for potential dangers. Nira volunteered, wanting to learn more and assist. The humans' methods were simple but highly effective. They observed carefully, planned each step, and taught the aliens to notice patterns, dangers, and opportunities. Tilo stayed close, carrying small supplies. Ran guided him patiently, explaining how to choose safe paths and how to work together as a team. Other children followed, eager to learn. Nira watched, impressed at how quickly the young aliens adapted. They were learning courage, intelligence, and responsibility at the same time. The group traveled cautiously across the icy plains, encountering small patches of fragile ice, hidden crevices, and unstable snowdrifts. Ron demonstrated how to cross these safely using simple tools and clear observation. The aliens followed, their trust in him complete. Nira noticed that fear had been replaced with confidence. They were learning not only to survive, but to thrive in the harsh environment. Back in the settlement, the other families worked on improving shelters and heat devices, sharing knowledge freely. Nira saw parents teaching children, and children teaching other children, creating a cycle of learning and growth. The settlement had become a community of teachers and learners, inspired by the humans' example. By evening, the exploration group returned safely, bringing back small resources and valuable knowledge about the surrounding plains. Everyone gathered around fires, sharing stories and information. The sense of achievement was palpable. Nira held Tilo close, feeling the warmth of the fire and the warmth of hope in the settlement. Vero spoke to the group. "We have faced storms, tremors, and cold, but now we are stronger, wiser, and united. We have learned to survive, to protect each other, and to work together. We have learned from humans, and we will carry this knowledge forward." There was a cheer from the group, a sound that had been rare in the settlement until now. Ron moved, among them quietly observing, offering small guidance, and showing approval. Nira realized that his presence had changed their lives forever. Humans had a unique gift. They not only survived, but also taught others to survive. They inspired courage, wisdom, and cooperation. Nira knew that her colony would never forget these lessons. Night fell over the icy plains, calm and peaceful. Shelters glowed with warmth, children slept safely, and families rested with confidence. Nira held Tilo, whispering softly, "We have come so far. We are safe. We are learning, and we are strong." Tilo smiled sleepily, his small hands clutching her cloth. "We are brave," he murmured, "because of him." The stars shone brightly above, reflecting off the ice and snow. Nira looked out at the settlement, feeling pride, hope, and gratitude. The humans had not only protected them, but had taught them to be stronger, braver, and wiser. The settlement was no longer just surviving. It was thriving. Ron stood nearby, quietly observing, his presence calm and reassuring. Nira understood that his work was not finished, but the foundation had been laid. The aliens had learned courage, intelligence, and cooperation. They had learned to act together, plan together, and protect each other. Humanity had shown them the path to resilience. Tilo stirred in her arms, opening his eyes. "Will he stay with us?" he asked softly. Nira smiled, brushing his hair from his face. "Yes, Tilo. He will help us grow stronger, and together we will face whatever comes next." The settlement slept peacefully under the clear night sky. Fires glowed warmly in front of shelters, children rested safely, and families felt hope for the future. Humanity had arrived as strangers, but they had become teachers, protectors, and symbols of courage and wisdom. Nira held Tilo close one last time before he fell fully asleep. "We are not alone," she whispered. "We are learning. We are strong, and we are ready for the future." She looked at Ron, who gave a small nod of reassurance. The bond between humans and aliens was stronger than ever, built on trust, courage, and shared knowledge. The icy plains of Kirill were still harsh, but the settlement had changed. With humans guiding, teaching, and inspiring, the aliens had discovered their own strength. They had learned that survival was more than endurance. It was courage, cooperation, and wisdom combined. Nira smiled softly, feeling hope for the first time in her life. The colony was ready for a new beginning. They were stronger, wiser, and united. And with humans among them, they would face the future not in fear, but with courage, hope, and determination.